today we're finishing the Spider-Man costume. So in the last couple episodes, we covered the mask, the web shooters, the gloves, the boots. So all that's left is the body part, right? Just the blue and then the red on the chest. So all you're gonna need is a blue bodysuit, spandex bodysuit, and some red lycra. So yeah, let's get started. Here's what I've got so far. I know I kind of skipped a bit, but the red part is just the shape that I cut out of the red lycra, and then the neck hole, I just cut out a circle of it. And now you can see I started safety pinning on the red where it's going to go on the blue so that we can sew it together. So yeah, I'm just going to check back in when I'm finished pinning on all the red. Okay, so I finished pinning on all the red fabric with safety pins. And as you can see, I got kind of ahead of myself and started drawing some of the webs on there. I was going to do it in more of a professional way to get the web better looking, but as you can see, it is October 27th, and I need to finish this for Halloween. So now we're gonna get to sewing. So basically what I'm gonna do is individually replace each safety pin with a normal pin, one by one, to get everything sewed properly. And the reason we have to switch the pins is because the safety pins are too big, but I used them so that they wouldn't slip out when I took the suit off after pinning it. So let's get to sewing. So what I ended up doing for this sewing job, I know I said I was going to replace each safety pin with a normal pin, but I ended up not doing that. I basically just sewed the distance between each safety pin and took the next one out, and so on until the entire red part was sewed onto the blue. And then after that, I cut out the blue part that was behind the red on the inside of the suit so that I could minimize any baggy spots. At the time we're filming this, I've been gone for a long time. The last clip I recorded working on my Spider-Man costume before picking it back up a couple days ago was 15 weeks and 4 days ago. So that was October 30th. I was working on it the day before Halloween, and then I messed up and the project was suspended. So I'm back. It's February 16th. Happy birthday, Mary. And we're going to keep working on the suit. Okay. I finished sewing on all the red fabric. You can see it actually kind of looks like a Spider-Man suit. You can see there's these little notches down here. That was a screw up on this side. I'll show you a picture closer up. Basically, I mis-sewed a spot here, and I was trying to fix it by cutting out a slot there, and that didn't go over very well. So I put down the costume, and here we are, 4 months later? But yeah, anyway, I finished sewing all the red fabric on. I've got a little neck piece added on there, so the neck is red, and I went ahead and added a nice belt, because Spider-Man's got a belt. So that brings us to the next step. You can see earlier in the video I showed you that I already drew some of the webs on here. This is kind of bad lighting here. But now we're just going to finish drawing all the webs on here. Probably what I'll do is maybe put a pillow inside this suit so it's stretched out kind of like it would be on a person if they're wearing it. And then after that, we can transfer this logo here. I know it's not super classic looking. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay, anyway. Sorry about that. Chair gets stuck sometimes. So anyway, what I was saying, I know this logo isn't super reminiscent of the classic Spider-Man logos because it's a little skinnier and got those kind of like pincer things that the Tobey McGuire Spider-Man suit kind of has. But for the purpose that this suit is going to be used for, I won't say yet, but it is important for a logo that isn't completely copying the classic logo. You'll see why. And that goes for the back logo as well. I haven't drawn a template for that, but I will. So I basically just took a black normal Sharpie and drew on all the webs.
This step is actually pretty easy. All you have to do is draw some vertical lines, kind of a bunch of columns, and then connect with a bunch of horizontal little arches, kind of look like rainbows in there. And once you do that, that's basically it for the webs. So I just did this so that way I could get everything a little more mapped out before I did the silver puffy painting. And that's pretty much it. One thing I do want to say, however, is when you're drawing the webs over the shoulders, you want to be careful because the fabric will kind of curve in an interesting way, and you got to be careful about how you're drawing the webs and making sure everything connects together. But yeah, other than that, this was pretty fun and honestly kind of relaxing to do. So yeah, just have fun with it. So I drew the webs on the neck basically the same way, except I put a roll of paper towels in there so that it was shaped more like a neck. But other than that, yeah, that's it for the webs.
Alright, I finished drawing on all the webs, done everything on the belt, on the back, and I did the neck too. So now, the next step would be to puffy paint all these webs to match the silver that I did on the mask, gloves, boots. But first we gotta make the spider logo. Now you could just draw it on there with the Sharpie the same way as the webs and just freehand it, but I don't really want to do that because I don't think it's gonna look very well. So like I said, we're gonna use this template here. So what we're gonna do, you can see I already laid down a bunch of masking tape here, and we're going to trace this logo onto the masking tape, cut it out, and then we'll have a little tape stencil. So we'll put this back on the pillow, and once we do that, we'll tape the stencil on there and use a sponge brush and some black puffy paint to apply the logo. And then when we peel the stencil off, I can let that dry, and then take the puffy paint once again, just right out of the bottle, and go around the edge of the logo to make it look a little bit more dimensional, you know. Once we do that, then we can puffy paint everything.
So the way I did this was I just taped the paper template down onto the cutting mat right over the spot where I already put a bunch of tape down, really good so that it wouldn't move anywhere. And then once I did that, I took a nice sharp X-Acto knife and cut out the spider logo out of the template so that there was a little indentation on the tape stencil.
So we've engraved kind of the logo here into our little stencil. So now we're going to cut it out and then remove the actual spider part and then just tape the stencil part onto the suit. Before we do that though, I do need to go put this back onto the pillow, so let's just... Alright, so you can see I put that little red dot and circle there. That's kind of where the head of the spider is going to go, but before that, we got to cut this out, so let's do that.
Alright, so now just carefully take off the stencil and put it on the suit.
Okay, well the stencil's taped on, and there's a slight issue. It won't stick down perfectly, and I'm worried that if I try and paint over it, it'll peel up and all kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to do is trace the outline with a Sharpie, and then I might just color it in and then puffy paint the edge. We'll see. We'll see what happens, so yeah.
So, once again, I just took a nice Sharpie and traced along the entire edge of the stencil. And now, I'll give you this satisfying clip of me peeling off all the masking tape. Wow. Trust me guys, it was more satisfying in person. Don't judge me for that. Alright, so now I just took the Sharpie again and finished coloring in all of the spider logo. I tried to do this in as clean as possible. I did notice I kind of messed up tracing the spider logo and it was a little uneven, and in the end it ended up being a little uneven on the entire suit, but it's not that noticeable and I'm definitely happy with it.
Okay, this spider logo is all drawn. It's not perfect, it's slightly lopsided and stuff, but that's okay with me, partly because all this webbing on here also is kind of not perfect, you know? So that kind of adds to the realism of this costume, because if you think about it, Peter Parker is a 16, 17-year-old nerd who has never done anything related to sewing in his life. And then he gets bit by a spider, and he has to make a costume. And if you look at the costumes used in the movies, like the Amazing Spider-Man and the normal Spider-Man, they don't look like this, right? They look like this. So I think, personally, this is a little more realistic, considering I'm 14, and if I was Spider-Man, this is what my suit would look like. Now we're going to put this back on the pillow and puffy paint all the webs. And once I do that, that should distract a lot from all these imperfections right here, like, and everything. I think the silver webs will be super flashy and take a lot of the attention away from all the screw-ups in the suit. But yeah, this logo turned out, better than I thought, to be honest. So yeah, let's get to puffy painting.
So this puffy paint job is pretty easy. It's basically the same as how I did it on the mask. If you haven't watched that though, it's like I said, super easy. Just squeeze the bottle and drag it so that every line gets painted out. And something else I want to mention is that it will sink into the fabric a little when it dries. So if you're worried about that, maybe layer it on extra thick or do a double layer like after it dries. I didn't worry about that because I felt like that would take too long and it doesn't really matter to me. And something else I want to mention is that I also mixed in with the puffy paint a little bit of liquid latex, about 20%, so that when the puffy paint dries, it won't be as susceptible to cracking, because that doesn't look good and makes it more prone to peeling off, which also doesn't look good. So yeah, the liquid latex is just a pretty handy thing to do when you're puffy painting. And that's basically it for puffy painting. You just let it dry for about 10 hours after you're done. And then, yeah, that's it. So after I had finished a sufficient chunk of the silver webs, I decided I was going to do the black on the logo. So what I did was I took the puffy paint, the black puffy paint, did the same thing as the webs, but a little bit smaller because I was just kind of tracing the edge of the logo to make it a little more dimensional. And I did come across a slight issue when I did this, because when I did this, I painted everything, and then the paint was like super dark, and that made the area of the logo that I had colored with a Sharpie look a little lighter. So eventually what I ended up doing is just puffy painting inside the entire logo, and just completely covering up the Sharpie. But yeah. So now, before I finished puffy painting all the silver webs on there, I decided I wanted to make the back logo. So I sketched up a quick template of it, and then I started cutting it out. And what I did is I sliced it up the middle, because the zipper is going to have to run through it when it's on the actual suit. Once I did that, I traced it onto the back of the suit, and I made sure to use a really fine point Sharpie, so that way I wouldn't get too much overflow, kind of muddying up the way the back logo sat on the suit. Once I had the whole logo traced out, I just took some deep red puffy paint and painted around the edge, kind of like I did on the front logo, so that I'll have a nice border when I go to fill in the rest of the logo. So after that kind of edge tracing puffy paint thing I did was dry, I went back in and filled in the rest of the logo just with the same color to get everything nice and red looking. Now, you can see in this picture here, I kind of don't like the way that there's a massive gap between the halves of the logo. I might end up painting some more in there. I'm just a little worried because I don't want to mess up the zipper by painting it, so I don't know, we'll see. Oh, so anyway, I did end up painting more red on the zipper spot. So what I did is I put some masking tape over the actual zipper, and then I ended up just painting a little bit of more red right next to it. That looks better. Alright, so the last bit of silver webbing that I had to finish up was on the neck. So what I did to stretch out the neck properly while painting was I took a little cereal bowl and just stuck it in there, and then just painted on the webs just like everywhere else in the costume. Now that is almost it. All we have to do is put some Velcro in a couple spots, and we'll be good to go. Alright guys, this is it. Fully completed. So, that just about does it. The whole costume is fully complete. I love the web shooters. I love how they can just stick right onto the gloves, no strap visible at all. I finally finished sewing on all the Velcro, which took a while because it's hard to sew through Velcro with hand sewing. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Spider-Man series. And if you build maybe the mask or the web shooters or even the whole costume, you can maybe send a picture to my Gmail or Instagram. And that's it. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.